Hey losers, what's happening? Before season 4 of Stranger Things dropped on Netflix, I made a cute little video about how I was absolutely terrified of it. I was extremely worried for the product that we'd get because of how vastly different season 3 was from the previous two groundbreaking and near perfect seasons. My fear was rooted in a hatred for season 3 and how the entire show had seemed to turn into a mockery of itself. After season 4 was released, though, my feelings kind of calmed. I watched the season, I laughed and cried and scratched my head and got excited and mad, but afterwards I didn't really care for it. The season left us with so many questions. Everything that was discussed seemed to be so unknown. Nothing connected to what we already saw in the series, and no loose ends were tied up, so I felt disconnected from it. It was released in May of 2022, right? Well, I didn't sit down to rewatch any of it until October of 23, and then not again until February of 25, and that was just when I was moving into my new apartment, so I had to have something on in the background. And it wasn't until that latest rewatch, the February one, where I skipped through all of the lab and the Russia plot lines, that I felt a rage. This season feels almost embarrassing to me. It has really great moments, of course. It's not lost on me why Stranger Things is one of the most popular TV shows of all time, but at the same time, it's almost unrecognizable. This season almost felt like a fan fiction. You know, the ones that are just so far from the source material that it just feels like a completely different story? That's what this feels like at times, with the excursions and the ambitions. Like, good on the Duffers for trying to tell an expansive story, but at times I feel like it's forgotten that this is still television and there's still a certain science that must go into it. Not to mention that they have a reputation to uphold, as audience have been expecting a certain product for the 6 years that their show had been premiering. I've written now this entire little essay about how season 4 of Stranger Things sucks. So I'm going to be looking down here and reading a little bit. Please enjoy the background behind me, but otherwise just close your eyes and listen to me talk. Terrible horror. The first thing that sets the season off is the horror. This is well remembered as the scariest season, and maybe I'm just blind to it, but I ask you, how? How is this the scariest season? Where is this horror that we're talking about? The season reminds me a lot of Stephen King's It, which is so glaringly obvious when you actually think about it, but we can talk about those lines blurring some other time. One thing that season 4 and It have in common is the stupid CGI monsters. The true terror and the thematic elements of It is a psychological and environmental one that was set off by the unsettling presence of Pennywise. However, that wasn't always the result, as the movies fell into the trap of every scary scene just turning into some dumb, fake-looking monster that isn't scary to look at. We're adults. Judith isn't fucking scary. Creepy, sure, so let's have her do creepy things rather than a jump scare out of the darkness. And season 4 follows suit with this. I'll get into Vecna's physical design in a second, but even with the little trances that everyone goes into, their nightmares look dumb because of these stupid monsters. Like, it's scary and it's heart-stopping and gut-wrenching to see Chrissy's mom so bluntly body-shaming her, but then she's actually fake and is decaying. But not decaying because she's still completely coherent, so it's not a scary moment of Chrissy seeing her mom dying in front of her. She's just turning into this otherworldly evil. We see the victim of the car crash screaming for help as he climbs out of the rubble. We see his funeral where everyone mocks Fred, except it's clear that this isn't real, and thus we lose the natural uncomfortability that we all just felt. I think the best example of fear in Stranger Things has been when Will was possessed, which is funny because it was also their first mistake in their horror. Will tied down to a bed, screaming in pain and choking his mother is scary. It's not scream at the top of your lungs scary, but it's the physical reaction of breathlessness and intrigue from the audience while they're watching it. That's what categorizes it as something that is scary, not by a textbook definition, but the physical reaction that we feel. Then, though, he turns into a little monster with that growl of the Mind Flayer or something. They use a voice modulator to turn this naturally terrifying moment into a fabrication of what we've been taught as children is scary. And that's exactly what this all is. We're taught that creatures are scary and growls are scary, but as we grow up, we know a more mature horror, which is what these characters are experiencing. Since the show is targeted for an older audience, since the kids are growing up, you'd expect that the horror would be more mature now. But instead, it turns into this embarrassing display in the sense that instead of trusting these naturally created horrific moments, we've resorted to cheap tricks. The series is infantilizing itself and taking an easy way out, losing authenticity and care, which is also clear in the abundant use of CGI effects. I understand that this season is a huge undertaking, and so it probably was a lot less time to do CGI than practical effects, but I don't care. It 1000% destroys the integrity of this series when, back in season 1, the crowning jewel of the series, the Duffers were deliberate in not wanting to use CGI. We had a mysterious creature that we didn't see until the end, but now why not throw that shit into every episode? It's not like it takes extra time out of our days. We already have the technology. Yeah, let's not keep Vecna a surprise. Let's have our fight scenes against fake bats look like it's AI generated while the Upside Down loses all terrifying appeal and the unfamiliarity we're presented with. Because again, horror works best when it's something you can imagine, when it's something that is familiar. You see what I'm getting at? That CGI has become a useful resource to them to outsource their tension and horror for the easiest trick in the book, despite the fact that it's the exact opposite track that they wanted the series to take in the first season. That is what infantilizes season 4 to me. It completely dumbs down the entire series, ignores what the series was based on, and thus loses all of its integrity in something worthwhile in a horror genre. How we feeling? No suspense. Paired with its poor horror is a lack of suspense as well. I think this is largely due to the immense amount of characters that are now featured on the show. It's not unlike Stranger Things to showcase the story from so many different perspectives. In season 1, we got to piece together the story through Joyce, Hopper, the boys, Elle's memories, Jonathan and Nancy's side plot, sometimes Steve and Martin Brenner. We didn't see Will Byers in the Upside Down, creating a fear of the unknown for the viewer. We knew so little of the Upside Down and what it was capable of, which built the suspense of the show, as the effect of the suspense was directly connected to our curiosity. We didn't know what the monster looked like. We heard it attack Barb, but we had no idea what it was outside of the outline Will saw or the blurry view that Nancy and Joyce saw. That builds suspense. We don't know if Will is okay. We don't know what we're dealing with. We don't know what it's capable of or how all these pieces fit together. Of course, in later seasons, it is hard to have that same level of unknown as we already know so much about their world. It doesn't matter if you hide the Upside Down in season 2 because we've already seen it. But the Upside Down we saw in season 4 was completely different, so why didn't they try to hide it? We already saw the Demogorgon. There was no reason to hiding it in season 2, so they went on with a secondary villain, the Shadow Monster, something that we only saw through Will's nightmare and only once in its physical form as it was exorcised out of him. So we still had that suspense, that fear of not knowing what the monster was capable of. Season 3 was when we lost the suspense of monsters, as it was the first time that we saw the perspective of the villain in Billy. We didn't know that Will was a spy in season 2. We don't know what he told the Mind Flayer or how he said it, but for some reason we get to see the full debauchery of Billy and the Mind Flayer's hold on him. So how can we be scared when he does something that we've already seen that he's capable of? You know? This is also the first time that we get human villains that our characters have to fight against. Once again, lowering the expectation of fear, because there's nothing that the newspaper assholes can do to Jonathan and Nancy that's worse than what the monsters could have done to them in the past. The stakes are so much lower than they were in previous seasons. I did love the Gloopy Monster in season 3, but that was something that wasn't shielded from us, like how the Demogorgon was in season 1. The brilliance of the Demogorgon was that it wasn't used in its entirety to its full potential until the finale. But now in season 3, we have characters that are interacting with that creature far before the finale. So it's hard to have suspense when you know that this won't be the height of the conflict. The show's not over. There are no stakes here. But then also, when you get to the height of the conflict, you already know what to expect because you've already seen what the monster is and what it's capable of. Which brings us to a head in season 4. We are handed our villain on a silver platter. We become face to face with him in the first episode, desensitizing us to everything that could be horrifying about him. Because not only did we just see him, we also saw exactly what he was capable of as we were given Chrissy's perspective throughout the episode. In season 1, we watched Barb die, but we didn't see how she died. Now, we see Chrissy die right off the bat. In season 1, we would follow the perspectives of 7 lines of the story. Now we have Joyce and Murray, Hopper, Elle, the Callie gang, Nancy and Robin, Max, the basketball guys, General Hawkins' crew, Eddie, Chrissy, Fred, and Vecna. Were you counting? That's 12. And thusly, we lose all suspense in this story because we've seen literally every single side of the story in real time. The mission of this season, what they're advertising to the audience, is no longer, ooh, what is this evil that's attacking our world and how did it get here and what is it capable of? But instead, who is this guy and what's his plan? I want to present you with an alternative, with something to imagine. Walk with me here. Imagine episode 1, where we meet Chrissy for the first time on the floor in the bathroom when Max is inside. And imagine that it ends at that. We're following Max, we see Chrissy crying, and then we leave the bathroom with Max. Imagine we don't see Chrissy that school day. It was only her crying on the floor in the bathroom and in the hallway when she went to the basketball game, and then Max saw her and Eddie go into his trailer. Ooh, why are they hanging out? I don't know. And then the next morning, There are sirens going around Max's neighborhood, and we wonder what is going on until she peeks in Eddie's doorway and we see Chrissy dismembered on the floor. How much more terrifying would that have been? A lot. In the next episode, Fred starts acting weird, but we don't see why. We don't see his visions. He's a new freaking character. Why do we get his perspective? We just see him staring off into space in a trance through Nancy's perspective. He disappears and Nancy looks for him, and then she sees him in the street suspended in the air, and without any interference of what he saw, we watch as she watches his bones snap and his body fall to the ground. Who did it? How did it happen? We don't know. We just know that anyone could be next. How much more terrifying would that have been? But Stranger Things has lost its creativity. They are so obsessed with shocking us that they have lost their true sense of storytelling. In season 1, how were we supposed to believe that Will's body was a fake? It's pulled out of the water, they hold a funeral, we hear his voice on the radio but wonder if it's real or if it's the baby next door. We're shocked when Hopper pulls stuffing out of him. I fully believe, though, had that scene been made in season 4, it would have shown someone putting his body in the quarry, and then after the boys were sad, we would have seen the guy that found it getting paid, and then Will in the Upside Down, safe and sound. They're literally playing with that in season 4. The big mystery of season 1 is if Will is dead, while the big mystery in season 4 is who is killing these people, and from episode 1, we know who is killing them. Sure, we don't know that it's Henry Creel, but that's because we don't know who Henry Creel even is yet. And in that case, change the story structure. Don't show Eddie during Chrissy's death. Let us see if the characters believe that it wasn't him off of his word alone, just like how the boys had to believe Will was alive based off of Elle's word alone. And yes, I don't think that the show should just be rehashing old plots that they used in their first season. That shouldn't just be a copy and paste, you know? But it wouldn't be if they're just using a formula that works. Copy and pasting would be if they use the exact same dialogue and whatnot. Teach us about Victor Creel, and then introduce us to Peter the Orderly, and when he tells Elle his story, let us connect the dots that he's Henry. Let us wonder what happened to him after he got banished to the Upside Down. You can show his descent after he falls, of the skin being torn away, and leave the audience thinking, oh no, maybe he dies. He doesn't need to talk to Max directly. He's not recruiting her to his army. His eerie voice is enough. I'd argue that it makes even less sense for him to talk to his victims directly if his whole purpose is to make them feel guilty for the things that they did wrong, make them fearful of themselves based on the images you show, not fearful of you because you're gross to look at. Whatever happened, just show, not tell. I understand that they were showing us who Vecna is and not telling us, but also this is a different medium than the one that exists in Show Not Tell. This is TV. It only shows. Showing exactly what happens is telling in TV. Where the show comes in is in the reactions and the effects that the events have. We have show not tell in the literary sense, while I present react not show in the film sense. Think of an opening exposition in movies. You can have a narration over an animated map of a family moving across the country for your literal tell, but we're swapping tell for show in this filmed sense. So that opening scene would be the kids being sat down and told that they're moving and having to pack up their bags, and then we cut to them at their new school, getting their schedule and being so confused. What I'm presenting, though, is react. React shows the effect that the event would have from the opening being the main character getting ready for school with their bedroom full of moving boxes and then anxiously looking around their schedule and the rooms in the hall at the school. That still tells the audience, we just moved, but it's in a more creative way of telling them. The mystery of this season is ruined from the beginning. The mystery instead turning into, oh my gosh, how does this all connect? Which makes the entire season feel like just a waste of time. What is the point in rewatching if there's nothing new to learn? When you rewatch season 1, you notice little hints and Easter eggs that you didn't before because you now know how the end of the mystery is after finishing the season. But in season 4, after you see it all for the first time, that's all you need to know. And the things that could have been interesting to see again, like the introduction to the Creel family with Henry's point of view, they already flashed it back for us. You're not watching the show going, wow, I need to go back to that episode again and see the hints of Henry having powers. Instead, they're going, look, Henry has powers, and now that you know that, we're going to show you all the previous Easter eggs right now. It is so embarrassing how little they trust their audience and how little creativity and artistry they actually have. And that's actually what is funny about this, is that I have on record me complaining about this exact problem in season 3. In my cute little video about my fears for season 4, there was a whole last section on the poor suspense in season 3. But that was less based in poor storytelling and horror and thriller elements, and more so the juvenile and frankly stupid way of resolving any and all conflicts with guns and punching and screaming and This season, though, is no different. If anything, I could argue that it's worse. Since the season is so long, the big action scenes are so far apart, and therefore we don't see these moments as often as we did in season 3. Even when they stray from this normality, it's like, at what cost? Vecna is using his mind powers to throw Elle around, but like, that does nothing because this is a mind fight. She can't actually get hurt, so what the hell are we doing? This isn't suspenseful. We know that she is actually fine. She's right there on the table. But then, of course, we have parts that have the slightest bit of stakes. Hopper having a sword was fucking awesome because it was cool as a baseline, but also extra cool because it pairs us back to Dungeons and Dragons and reminds us of this show's heart. And the flamethrower thing was cool because it was cool, but also it reminded us of season 1 when they lit the Demogorgon on fire, and in season 2 when they lit the hub on fire. You know, the 2 good seasons. And then we have the aggression from the basketball guys. Terrifying, yes, but dare I say, slightly unnecessary. Like, I don't want to say that things are too vulgar, right? When things are too hard to watch, that it's unnecessary. Like, I'm not uber sensitive, I swear. But I feel like this is just there for the dash of shock value. Like, Jason holding Lucas at gunpoint is one thing. Like, that makes sense, I guess. He's upset. But that other guy tackling Erica, a 17 or 18-year-old basketball player tackling an 11-year-old girl to the ground, I can't stomach that. Especially paired with that racial aspect of these two characters being put in great danger at the same time, 2 situations echoing excessive force from police officers or just people in general, with Lucas with his hands up having to put the flashlight in his hand down and empty his pockets, Erica being pushed into the ground and detained. Are we overcompensating a little? Are we relying on minority suffering to scare our audience because your storyline isn't scary enough? And it can't help but feel targeted. We see Jason using the same excessive force on the nerds in the band, on Nancy in the store. This isn't like Steve getting punched in the face. It's not an interesting to watch role reversal of Jonathan beating him up. It's like kind of scary. Like when Jonathan was beating Steve up, that was relevant to the plot. It was Steve showing his true colors. It was another reminder of how much Jonathan gets picked on. It was Jonathan proving his love for Nancy and defending her. It was Steve realizing that he was in the wrong. This moment, though, is just, isn't it scary when Black people are fearing for their lives? Yeah. Maybe that's the point. This season has a lot of commentary on social roles, forced conformity, the satanic scare stemming from nerd culture, and the debauchery following casual drug use. There's always been bullying in Stranger Things. There's always been story beats about society, and maybe they're trying to be more mature in their storytelling. The Duffers did say that that was an intentional point of this season as the kids are growing up. But it's the same aspect of how they're losing the supernatural horror in the show. If the scariest part of the season was just an act of bullying against a young Black girl, then what the fuck is all this stuff with the Upside Down about? Does that make sense what I'm saying? There's no revolutionary horror elements in the show if it's being overshadowed by the realistic facts of people's daily lives. I'm glad they're showcasing it, but sadly, I don't know if it's really an understandable example of racism, as even Billy being racist towards Lucas went over so many heads. Since they tie this issue of Jason and the basketball guys into the greater mission, a general audience member might not realize that they're doing social commentary, so it's pretty shitty social commentary. It's clear when Troy and James are bullying Mike off of a cliff that that's an act of prejudice, but if Jason is just trying to protect Max from the big bad, then we don't understand the subtext of the prejudice. And I think part of the issue there is just the fact that these assholes are given the same screen time and thusly respect of the main characters. We know their reasoning, aka that they're not racist. So they're not showcasing the horror of racism to pair it with their story of outcasting. They're profiting off of this heap of adrenaline to help pump their story further, and it's not working. I keep making noise with that strand of light, and I want it to stop making noise. Also, I have my little bear. Hey! Poor use of characters. I will never forget sitting there, watching the final episode of Volume 1. I'm 15 minutes into it. It's 11 o'clock at night because it came out on opening night of a show I was directing, and I'm watching it. I'm thinking, damn, where's Mike Wheeler at? 30 minutes in, I take my little mouse and I scrub the timeline to see the little scene box and deduce, oh, the Callie gang, they're not in this episode. Mike, Will, and Jonathan are not in an entire episode of this season, of this series. Is that not fucking weird to anyone else? For Will, whatever, he was missing for an entire season when more is one episode, but up until then, Mike was the only character that appeared in every single episode of this series, because in The Lost Sister, Elle visits Mike in the void. That was new material that they filmed for that episode. Like, whatever, movie's got a movie or whatever, but you're telling me that you couldn't think of enough for them to do? You had your title characters from season fucking 1 sitting on the sidelines in your first drop finale? It's no wonder Finn Wolfhard was switched to 4th title spot. Look at this shit. And the base of this issue is the fact that this show has no idea what to do with its characters anymore. Will and Elle absolutely cannot be with the main story this season because they would have been just too much help. Will would have sensed the monster and nipped this in the bud real quick, and they wouldn't have had to set the house on fire because Elle could have taken care of business like before. No shit. But don't forget, Duffer Brothers, you did this. You made these characters and you gave them this presence and this ability, and now you're taking it away from them. And not only that, but giving it to other people. Look, Dustin is great, right? But he has way too much to work with. In season 1, he's the comic relief. Season 2, he gets the mentoring relationship with Steve while also being comic relief. In season 3, he starts to become the leader of an entire group, the Scoops Troop, while maintaining his mentoring relationship with Steve and also being comic relief. And in season 4, he becomes the head leader and the mastermind of the group and gains a new mentor in Eddie, who while also maintaining his relationship with Steve and also being the comedic relief. While other characters shift focuses from season to season, sometimes unbalanced, like Hello Will Byers, they just keep giving Dustin more to do. It's not shifts in his storylines or giving other characters a turn, it's additional to what he already has. Good for Dustin, but especially bad when what they're giving him was already the role for other people. And by other people, I mean Mike Wheeler. Yeah, let's throw Mike in California this season and have him whine about not loving his girlfriend and wear stupid outfits and let Dustin become the leader of the party. And this is a deliberate choice from the get-go. When Max tells Dustin what happens and he's like, oh, let's tell the others, but Mike's in fucking California. Oh, how convenient. They're flashing light onto the fact of like, yeah, we know that he could be helpful. It's convenient that he's not here so other characters get a chance. Also, side note, I know they tried to call him and like he couldn't get through because of the whole government thing, but they could have done it at the beginning when Joyce and Murray were still home, right? Or maybe like gone on a plane when they realized something was up, or Mike's mom could have gone on a plane when a serial killer was on the loose and she hadn't heard from her son in literal days. Anyways. And I know that there is a gang of people against Mike who think he's the worst character ever, and I do see your complaints. I do understand that he's rude and whiny or whatever, but I do also need us all to acknowledge that he started out this show as the protagonist. Remember that the protagonist is the most prominent figure in the story. Well, Mike is the most prominent figure because he's the one that is connected to every single other thing that's going on. The main storyline in season 1 is finding Will and figuring out what the Upside Down is. Well, he's the one finding Will. He's the one learning about the Upside Down. All of what they find out, Mike finds out too. And this is mostly clear for season 2 as well. He's with Will for his episodes. He's with Dustin and Dart. He's what Elle is yearning for, and so on and so forth. He interacts with every single character and every single storyline because he's the protagonist. That's what makes him prominent. Not only his appearance to the audience, which is frequent, but also with other characters. He feels relevant to the story, the ongoing story. Like, we can try to say that Elle is the protagonist in season 1, but she's just not. She doesn't interact with the other characters or storylines. It's only the party and it's only the Will finding mission that she's on. What Elle is the catalyst. What Will is the focus. He's the goal of the season. The Duffers have even said that this story is like E.T. and Mike's Elliot, Elle's E.T. Sure, the movie is named E.T., but E.T. is not the one that the story follows. It was Elliot's story first that E.T. was thrusted into. Besides that, though, we also need to acknowledge that Mike is the leader of the group. Obviously, he's not literally bossing Hopper around and stuff, but the fact that he interacts with all sides of the mission proves that he is influencing all sides of the mission. He wants to look for Will in the woods, so they look for Will in the woods. He wants to hold on to Elle, so they hold on to Elle. He defends his friends, he comes up with plans to protect people, he figures out the mystery that they're trying to solve. Even subconsciously and figuratively, he's the leader with his role as Dungeon Master. He literally creates the story that his party plays. He's the leader in their friend group too, as while they voted for Max to join because it's a democracy, they still listen to him in regards to how involved she gets to be because he's in charge. So not only does Dustin get to become the new brains behind the operation, the new leader that connects the dots, Mike's critical role in season 1 and 2 and just a dash of 3, but he also gets the relationship with Eddie. Despite already having that older mentor in Steve, and despite the fact that Eddie should have been Mike's mentor. Do we remember how Mike's hairstyle this season was modeled after Eddie? That is literally a point that was publicly made in promotional material, that he admires Eddie and thus tries to embody him? Oh, cool that mattered for the one episode that they interacted in. So what the hell are we doing? That could have opened up something new for Mike, this narrative of not knowing who he is and thus attaching himself to someone else and trying to become them. And it could pair nicely with his current issues of not knowing if he truly loves Elle and whatever complications lie with not knowing his true self. Like, that is Mike's true storyline deep down. Finn says constantly that he's trying to be as normal as possible and he's trying out new things. So why don't we have a season actually give us natural moments to focus on that? You can give Dustin the leadership role in partnership with Mike stepping down from it because he doesn't think that he's worthy, that he deserves it, or that he knows what to do with it. These stories can work together to strengthen what you have. But instead, the story is told in the simplest ways with those that actually care, having to dig deeper. Yet another example of infantilizing the show. Mike, the leader of the party and one of our protagonists, is forgotten about and only brought up in passing mention, like, Eddie was nice to me and Mike, or Mike's in fucking California, or Mike's always whining about the phone line being busy, all lines said by Dustin, by the way. Can you tell that Mike's my favorite character? Well, let's highlight one other character that they give Mike's story to. Max. Stay with me. Max being Vecna's target is a huge part of this season, and while I'm glad that she has something to do, I'm also frustrated that it came out of nowhere. Why was Max the one chosen for this storyline? Vecna crawls into the nightmarish and guilty minds of people, so why choose a character that we know nothing about? It made sense when Nancy was a target because we already knew what she was guilty for, but Max? No idea. We don't know anything about her. Why did they move? Does she know that Billy's dad abused him? Was she sad because this destructive person in her life died, or because it ruined her family and tore them all apart? What's going on? We get introduced to a narrative that she feels guilty for Billy's death, which again, never apparent in season 3. I'm going to compare it to Nancy again. While Barb was missing, she was riddled with guilt. Meanwhile, while Max knew that Billy was possessed, she didn't think that it was her fault for interacting with the Upside Down. Like, obviously it wasn't her fault, but like, that's not how guilt works. Like, you see that Nancy thought that Barb being missing was because she wasn't there for her. Max is like, oh, Billy's possessed. Doesn't have anything to do with me, you know what I mean? Then we're presented with that deep, dark thought that she wished she had died instead of Billy. And again, I don't want to discredit and invalidate her feelings because what do I know? Instead, though, I want to ask, why choose Max? Because it's interesting that we already have a character who has tried killing themselves, Mike Wheeler. It's a broken record in the Byler fandom how we don't discuss that Mike jumped off a cliff. You know, the very cliff where it was pointedly mentioned that no one could survive a jump from, the very cliff that people thought Will Byers had died from. And I see an argument of how this wasn't an act of attempted suicide since it was a sacrifice, but like, a sacrifice is still a suicide, right? Like, was Billy sacrificing himself, killing himself in front of the monster because he was ashamed of what he'd become? Was Mike jumping off of a cliff because he'd already lost his best friend? Because he thought worst case scenario, if Will was dead, they'd reconnect? Because he wanted Dustin to live? Because he felt worthless in the eyes of the bullies taunting him? I mean, he says it in season 4, these emotions are still there. He thinks his only worth in life is being there for Elle. He's just a random nerd that at least Lois Lane was a reporter. Him being distraught and feeling worthless after one fight with his girlfriend isn't because he's some whiny little brat. It's because he genuinely does not think that he has any purpose outside of Elle. He has crazy attachment issues and low self-esteem. These are all questions that could be explored and that have the ability to be explored. Instead of spontaneously giving Max depression in season 4, maybe remember that you gave it to Mike in season 2 and use it. And again, you can work together. Like, they can both be depressed, they can both be suicidal, I don't know. But also, I digress. Because it's not just Mike that they don't know what to do with, it's also Jonathan and Will. I saw a post on Tumblr that mainly talked about this, so I'm going to pay credit where credit is due. I just can't find the actual post. But the post is about how Eddie took Jonathan's character, okay? Bottom line, though, for me, is that Eddie is a conglomeration of other characters. Season 4, Jonathan was lost. He was in a deep depression. He was extremely misunderstood and misrepresented by the show as a whole. His suffering was played off with a mockery and not taken seriously. I mean, let's think of his main character points. He finally got a best friend, Argyle, someone that supports him and is there for him. Argyle's a person that he's never had before, and that's amazing. Except for the fact that the show clearly doesn't value his need for a person like that with how they scrapped Argyle for season 5. And also with how he had a friend. Will has always been his best friend, but, you know, at least we did get that 2.5 minute long scene in a 13-hour long season where they talk about how they're not friends anymore. Let's see. He uses weed as his coping mechanism, and like, fine, whatever, but his art used to be how he coped, how he found beauty in a dull world, but he didn't pick up his camera once and change how things looked for him this season. He just suppressed every emotion that he had. He gave up, and that's fine. He can be depressed and lose interest in things, but are we just not going to acknowledge it? No? Just laugh that he's high at dinner and ignore the fact that it's wildly out of character and frankly concerning? And the college drama. He decides to go to Lenora Community College to be with his family, knowing that his duty is to be there for them despite the fact that his dream since he was 6 years old is to go to NYU. What the fuck? And instead of the issue of his college drama being presented as he's throwing his dreams away, oh no, it's he doesn't want to go to college with Nancy. We're stuck between reducing his worth to his family by staying in Lenora or reducing his worth to Nancy and going to college with Nancy, ignoring the fact that he once had his own hopes and dreams. So here we have this character falling apart, and in the cracks, the rise of Eddie Munson. It's no surprise. I mean, we already have certified babysitter Steve Harrington, the mom of the group, taking over the world when that could have very easily have been Jonathan's role. You know, Jonathan, whose job it is way back in season 1 to wake Will up every morning and get breakfast served and work extra shifts so they can pay their bills. No, the respect that he deserves for the role that he was forced into in his family gets turned into respect for Steve as he is forced into a huge joke. That's the root of Stranger Things' issue. It makes jokes out of reality and it drives me frickin' nuts. Jonathan is over here being forced to be the father figure that he never had. He holds his crying brother so he can feel an ounce of safety in this world, but that is overshadowed by the mockery of itself in seeing Steve, the cool boy, give Dustin, the loser, advice about his hair. We applaud those simple acts that Steve does because they're unexpected, yes, but that doesn't mean that they should be held at a higher standard. Just because something is required of a person doesn't mean they don't deserve credit for it, but yeah, that's exactly what happens. Jonathan is just assumed to be the best older brother ever because he has no other choice. It doesn't matter how good he is at that job because he has no other choice. While Steve, though, gets roped into nonsense for comedic reasons and it saves his character. We drool over Jonathan. Nope. We don't. We never do. I was wrong. We drool over Steve and consider him a saint for driving dust into the snowball. Why don't we consider Jonathan to be a saint when he was picking out a coffin for his little brother? And then they pull that same shit for Eddie too. Steve is blown out of the water because Dustin can see himself in Eddie or what fucking ever. Because yeah, Eddie is a great role model for Dustin, the loser that gets bullied and is a drug dealer and is struggling to graduate high school after being held back. I don't want to be judgmental because there are great parts of Eddie too, don't get me wrong, but it's just interesting that they took the left turn of our role model being Steve Harrington, the douchebag who understood his wrongdoings when he was given a clear reality check with having to socialize with losers and get a job and realize he peaked socially in high school. He finds a new meaning for his life that was seeming hopeless. And now we turn to Eddie Munson, and he can play the guitar, but is below Dustin in every other way, academically, socially, bravery-wise, I don't know, but somehow Eddie's the one that Dustin can look up to. Like with Steve, they were sort of learning from each other, but what the fuck is Dustin learning from Eddie? Confidence? Steve already gave him that. We saw his hair at the snowball. You know who was a great role model, though, that was standing right there? Jonathan Byers. Jonathan, who has no friends, who is passionate about his craft, who stands up for himself and for others and is unapologetically himself and knows his priorities and helps those around him because he wished he had someone there to help him. Jonathan Byers, who was strong when others were weak. Is that not good enough? But not to stop there. Like I said, Eddie is a conglomeration of lots of other characters. He's a lot of Jonathan with the troubled home and the drugs to cope, but he's also a lot of Will. There's that thing that Eddie says that he does all the time, which is that he runs when he's scared. And you know, all the time is one fucking time when he was getting hunted for murder and so he hides because he's a new character this season. You can't say you do something all the time when we haven't seen you do shit. But you know who actually does run all the time? Who hides? Who made that their personality? Will Byers. That's how he survived in the Upside Down, by hiding. It's his theme song, Should I Stay or Should I Go? An anthem about making the choice to stay or to run, and he mostly chooses to run. We actually already got this arc of a character that runs, learning to stay and fight and it going poorly. It happened to Will in season 2 using Bob's advice. Why are we recycling old material, and why is it all of a sudden only now effective in captivating an audience? And it's frustrating too because Will is still sticking to his hiding tactic. His veiled love confession to Mike is an example of him hiding his feelings, hiding himself. He clearly hasn't yet learned to be himself and to be brave. But no, he doesn't get a self-aware moment this season of, wow, I always run and hide. No, instead our staple character from season 1, Eddie Munson, got it. And then he died. And then there are also the relations that Will and Eddie have together as both being the missing kids. Like, I know Barb obviously was missing for a while, but we see missing posters for Will and Eddie alone, which gives them that push more of a connection in the universe that Stranger Things exists in, like the visually, you know? And then there's the notion that Eddie's name is Eddie the Freak Munson, you know, because season 4 was so obsessed with these superlatives that were such lazy stereotypes in writing. So Eddie is the freak, which is funny because I remember Jonathan being the freak and I remember Will being the freak. And like, yeah, these are just insults, so obviously they're going to be reused, but if they're just meaningless insults, why the hell does it become Eddie's personality? Why is it something that we're supposed to feel sorry for when we've heard other characters be called it too? Or even worse, like, why was Hunt the Freak played off as a scary cultish thing and not the white boys of Hawkins literally assaulting an 11-year-old black girl? Why should I feel bad about Eddie when his only flaw is being non-conventional? When we've seen other people have real human emotions and real issues that they have to face. I mean, Jonathan was called a freak, and Jonathan was bullied and ridiculed because he was a social outcast and took pictures of Nancy undressing, a scene that was conveniently edited out of season 1, by the way. But he's still able to make a name for himself. He has his flaws, he has integrity, he's a well-rounded character that we feel bad for when his brother goes missing. We should also feel bad, too, for that little brother when there's a hot rumor that a supposed gay 11-year-old was murdered. Instead of feeling bad for Eddie, you know, antisocial teen that openly mocks other cliques gets a taste of his own medicine when popular kids don't like him. Even Eddie and Dustin's friendship acts as a direct foil to Mike and Will's, which is super weird, I know. But I want you to remember that Mike and Will's friendship is the foundation of this show. It is what inspires all of the coming events. If they weren't such close friends, Mike wouldn't have convinced them to go to the woods, they wouldn't have found Elle, and blah, 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 you get it. So instead of letting that friendship that they had, that relationship, be sacred and special, we're actually once again recycling its material and creating a meaningless replica. So we know Dustin took over Mike's character, and we know that Eddie took over Will's, right? Eddie inspired Dustin to be himself and to never change. Funny that in the same season, Will inspires Mike to do the exact same with his heart monologue in the van. Dustin has that special soft Eddie voice, while Mike wears a special soft Will voice in season 2. Dustin cries over Eddie's dead body while Mike cries on the bike ride home after seeing Will's in season 1. Eddie tries to express the importance of D&D to Dustin in season 4, while Will tries to do the same to Mike in season 3. And the cherry on top of the cake, Steve's jealousy towards Dustin's new friendship can be replicated in Mike's precautionary rejection towards Will and new attachment to Elle. A big part of this problem of a poor use of characters can be attributed to the fact that we have way too many characters that the show dedicates its time to. In season 1, the different plot lines that we saw were the 3 boys, Elle and her flashbacks, Joyce, Hopper, who eventually merge, Jonathan, Nancy, who eventually merge, and Brenner. So that's what, 9 characters and like 6 perspectives, okay? I want to split up the A-plot, B-plot structure so that we can see the different focuses that the show has. This structure is mainly what branches are going off of the central conflict of the season. For a regular episodic sitcom, they have like 2 to 3 plots. Think of like Girl Meets World, where like the kids all have their little drama based on what they're learning at school. Let's say someone that Farkle's getting bullied during. So they're learning about being yourself and whatever. That's the A-plot. But then the B-plot is Topanga teaching and showing Ava that she's loved by her no matter what. Those 2 plots connect. They have something to do with one another, right? So for season 1 of Stranger Things, A-plot, the party and Elle learning about the Upside Down. B-plot, Joyce and Hopper finding out if Will's alive. C-plot, Jonathan and Nancy dealing with the Demogorgon. And D-plot, the lab chasing Elle. Season 2, perspectives are a little bit harder, but we mainly have Will and Mike and Joyce and Bob, Hopper and Owens, and they're figuring out things separately but at the same time, Jonathan and Nancy, Dustin and Steve with Max and Lucas sprinkled in, and Elle with whatever she's doing. Again, 6 perspectives like in season 1. A-plot, Will and Mike and Joyce with Will's possession. B-plot, the lab and Hopper figuring out the upside down stuff with like the tunnels. C-plot, Jonathan and Nancy with spreading the truth. D-plot, Dustin and Steve and the demodog. And an E-plot, courtesy of Elle with her self-discovery stuff. Manageable. This season is 1 episode longer. An episode that didn't matter. And then season 3. The first season, we get the perspective of the villain, and they jump right ahead for the perspective of 2 villains. Now we're following the party, who are broken up between girls and boys for a bit. The Scoops troupe, we have Joyce and Hopper, and Murray and Alexi. We have Jonathan and Nancy. The Russians paired with the mayor, and of course, Billy. That's 7 perspectives, not a whole lot. Our A-plot, the party just like noticing that things are wrong. The B-plot, which is the Scoops troupe with their underground mission. C-plot, arguably Jonathan and Nancy with their rat stuff. D plot, Joyce and Hopper with the magnets in Illinois. E plot, Billy infecting everyone, I guess. And the F plot, whatever the Russians were freaking doing. That's too many. I know that it's one more plot than season 2, but it's also one less episode than season 2. And half of the characters we're following here are brand new characters. And then season 4 gets even worse. The perspectives, okay? We have Central Hawkins group that gets split up 1,000 times. Joyce and Murray, the Callie gang, Elle and her flashbacks with one, and the extension of also Owens and Brenner. Hopper in Russia, Eddie for some reason, the basketball team for some reason, even the police officers get their own moments, and Chrissy gets her own moments, and the government people after Elle get their own moments. That's like 10 different perspectives depending on how you want to slice it up, because of course these groups get split up so much each episode. Like, the Callie gang can be Mike and Will, or Jonathan and Argyle, depending on what they're dealing with, and the Hawkins group can be Robin and Steve, and Dustin and Max, and Nancy and Fred with whatever they're dealing with. So what are our plot lines? Who is figuring out what? Because that's what our plot lines are derived from, the central conflict. A plot is, I'd say, Max and getting terrorized by Vecna. B plot, Nancy's quest for Victor Creel. C plot, Elle getting her powers back. D plot, arguably the uncovering of one in flashbacks. E plot, Hopper doing time filler in Russia until Joyce gets there. F plot, Callie gang trying to find Elle. G plot, Joyce and Murray trying to find Hopper. H plot, the basketball team trying to find Eddie. I plot, the police officers just like being in the way of things. J plot, the government officials trying to find Elle. 5 of those plot lines were literally just trying to find other characters. They are contributing nothing to the central mission. They're just filler nonsense because you wanted the show to be longer and you didn't know what to do with all these characters. Like, yeah, some of these characters are necessary. Some of these plot lines need a moment to shine. But there's not enough time for 10 fucking plot lines to be featured in an episode to all be working together towards the goal. Like, for an hour-long episode, those 10 plot lines would each need 6 minutes to matter. But that's not what ends up happening. What ends up happening is that people get switched out and we go an entire episode without seeing some characters and without knowing what's going on with them. Or episodes have individual groups and missions that change. Like episode 1, there was no Callie gang. There was no Elle in Nevada. There was no Owens or Brenner or Hopper in Russia. And episode 1 was also wonderfully paced because they didn't have to juggle 1,000 things. They're not limiting themselves, which they need to do. I dare you to watch season 4 and skip all of Elle's scenes, skip all of Hopper's scenes, skip all of the Callie gang scenes. Like, so much of this shit isn't necessary. It makes your plot messy and it messes up your characters. Will's birthday. Jesus Christ. If you aren't in the Byler fandom, let me catch you up to speed on Birthday Gate. Sorry, everyone wanted the lights to talk to me anymore. This isn't season 1, guys, it's season 4. So Will Byers' birthday is on March 22nd. That is canon. It is in the universe. Joyce says it in season 2 in the scene in the shed. And in our world, it is validated and recognized by the show's brand as they wish Will a happy birthday on social media every year on March 22nd. Well, season 4 takes place in mid to late March. More specifically, it starts off on March 21st. Eagle-eyed viewers would notice that in episode 2, while Elle is being filmed at Wrinklemania, the date on the video camera says that it's March 22nd, Will's fucking birthday. And you know what that adds up? March 22nd in 1986 was a Saturday, and this is clearly a Saturday. Well, here's the issue. It is never once mentioned in this episode or anywhere in this season that it is Will's birthday. The Duffers have said that they just simply forgot and they could change Will's birthday to May 22nd to cover their asses and dub the season 2 line to say May 22nd, but they haven't done that yet and they are still observing Will's birthday as March 22nd in our world. It's like, if they did forget, whatever. I don't care. They're only making a fucking TV show and fans realize that mistake first watch, but again, whatever. The issue is that, like, okay, in universe, it's Will's birthday. It just makes the season have a completely different read to it. If they decide to extrapolate off of this in season 5, solidify that it actually was his birthday and make it a plot point instead of a mistake, like, wow, Mike forgot my birthday. That's amazing. But it creates an entirely different read on season 4 as it builds to its use in season 5. Firstly, would it be crazy to say that Chrissy died at midnight? I know that she didn't. A clock in Max's room when she sees Chrissy and Eddie show up reads just past 9, but it would be 10,000 times better if it was at midnight, you know, on March 22nd, Will's birthday. Like, we know that Will is the catalyst for all the Upside Down stuff. He is the great target for them and will be greatly used in season 5. If these killings started on his birthday, that could only build to that potential. Secondly, You're telling me that it's his birthday and everyone forgot? Or maybe not everyone. Like, we didn't see the morning. Maybe the buyers did a thing for breakfast, but like his friends didn't call. Like, yeah, they were busy, but he didn't know that. Like, he was sitting there the whole day, like, why are my friends called? Al planned a whole day about her and Mike and excluded Will in more ways than one, and Mike didn't say anything. Mike didn't even hug him. Mike yelled at him for being moody. Like, yeah, he's moody. It's his fucking birthday and no one's talking to him. That builds onto his heartbreak while being in love with Mike. That makes Mike even more of a blind asshole than he already was. This one tiny mistake can 1000% be used in season 5 for the supernatural purposes and to further push a Byler angst, but it also drastically changes season 4. And I don't know, I feel like you can't just drastically change a season 3 years after it came out. I made a joke after season 3 that in season 4 they would like find like Mike like ended up being Chester the dog in a Mike suit, and like the real Mike died in the Upside Down or something. You know, like you know what I mean? Like that would drastically change season 3 if like it wasn't actually Mike, it was Chester the dog. Obviously it's not gonna happen, it was just a joke, but like that's what it feels like to me, is that like they're gonna change this entire season based on one fact that we find out 3 years after the season came out. That also plays into all the questions that they tried to answer and yet also raised. The Upside Down has been frozen in time? Oh, really? Since when? Because somehow Will saw the letters under the Christmas lights, so he was also able to communicate with Joyce. We saw the gym with the snowball sign and lights in the Upside Down in season 2. This is just contradicting what's been said and known in previous seasons, further complicating things. Yeah, I bet we're going to find some answers in season 5, but again, why the hell leave your audience scratching their heads all season for the past 3 years? A revelation like the Upside Down's frozen in time on the day Will went missing should make everyone go, ooh, ah, that's so cool and interesting, and not, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Because like, just like fucking up Will's birthday, it shows that the Duffers are careless. They don't remember their own story, which is understandable because there is so much story in so many years, but that's still a valid piece of criticism from me. There's a certain read that they don't care about their story, that they are wildly unprepared for this show. We talked about this in the season 3 criticism. The Duffers walk into a season without scripts finished. They change shit all the time. For example, Elle was supposed to die at the end of season 1. Steve wasn't supposed to turn into a good guy, but the Duffers liked Joe Keery. And Steve and Robin were supposed to get together, but during filming, Maya Hawke was like, hey, what if she was a lesbian though? This begs the question of how much of all of this was intentional, how much of it was planned. If these past 4 seasons have just been throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks, what is going to happen in season 5? Season 4 is random thoughts. Going off of that thought of what is planned and whatnot, it makes sense that there are tons of random focuses that come up this season that have just come out of nowhere. Jonathan gets a friend. That rocks. He's never wanted one before. He already had Nancy and Will, but okay. And he's smoking weed? Sure, that makes sense, I guess. I mean, makes sense he would have an addiction because his mom smokes cigarettes like crazy and her dad have alcohol issues, clearly, so maybe it would have been like one of those, but no, I guess weed is fine too. Oh, and he's getting ready to go to college? That's great, because in season 1 he said he wanted to go to NYU. Oh, he wants to go to Emerson because of Nancy? Oh, no, it's Lenore Community College because he wants to be closer to his family? Interesting avenue to explore. I can't wait to. Oh, wait, no, they don't live in Lenore anymore, so where is he going to college? Oh, they're switching up his character, not telling us why, not focusing on why, not giving him time to mourn his dreams. He's still lying to his girlfriend. Okay. I think that we were doomed from the start with all these random focuses with the fact that the buyers are in California. Like, that is a huge location shift that opens up a different background and aesthetic and avenue for plot lines and whatnot. Along with that, we have the hole that they left in Hawkins and the new characters that are going to fill that hole. Great! But with all of that random stuff or different stuff showing up, it means we're going to get so many random new additions to the show. We've already established that Eddie was a conglomeration of other characters who was created to fill these holes from Will and Jonathan. Max's all of a sudden attachment with Vecna was to fill the hole from Will and Elle, but let's rehash it because this season rehashes everything all the time. This season showed us Eddie, the freak at Hawkins High School that everyone hates, you know, the one that we knew about, the one that Steve bullied in season 1. We're shown that Eddie has been working so hard to graduate school, and we definitely know that because we've definitely seen him come close so many times. We're shown that he doesn't want to run away from the bats because he runs away from conflict constantly, which we know from all the different altercations we've seen him in. I'm dripping in sarcasm, by the way. This stuff came out of nowhere. Even Max's stuff came out of nowhere. You're telling me that you feel bad for your older stepbrother who was racist and aggressive and abusive? Like, maybe she does. Maybe they grew closer after she showed him up in season 2 and brought him down a peg. But of course, we weren't shown that. in season 3, we weren't even shown that in season 4. Mike being in a new D&D party came out of nowhere after he refused to play all summer. Sure, maybe Will helped ignite that love throughout the summer, but also Will told Mike that it wasn't possible for him to join another party. Good thing it was possible for Mike too. I feel like season 3 was just like skipped in terms of character. Like in season 1 and season 2, Lucas is bullied relentlessly. So because of that, it makes sense that in season 4, he wants to be one of the popular kids so he can have a new image. But that sure as hell wasn't a plotline that connected throughout season 3 where he did jack shit except eat cereal and drink new Coke. And that's similar to Mike and Elle's relationship as well. Elle spends all of season 3 learning that Mike isn't all that she needs to be happy and that she has an identity outside of him. And as a stretch, she learns that she has an identity outside of being a superhero with how much they try to overuse her powers to no avail. And yet we start off season 4 with her obsession with him again. And it's clearly an obsession as it's compared to Will's love for Mike. Like they both love him, but Elle is the one that has the shrine. And Elle is the one that wants the entire day to be about the two of them, despite the fact that Will's there too and it's his birthday. And Will's love is shown through a thoughtful gift and a meaningful conversation as he tries to reassure Mike. Similarly, Mike ends season 3 with that open-eyed refusal to kiss Elle back, and yet season 4, he's late to school because he's reading her love letter. And like, I know that he hasn't been saying I love you, but we're made to believe that this is their first in-person interaction since the end of season 3, and it's just that quick hug and kiss with indoor sunglasses on. Wait, no. Indoor sunglasses. Sunglasses on indoors. They don't make indoors. Do they make indoor sunglasses? I don't think he had them. When did he put them on? Oh, I guess like in the old days they had to like walk off the plane. I don't know. I wasn't alive. This is an interaction that I would expect from them if this was their first scene after season 2 was over, but there was no bridging of the gap between Mike being all weird at the end of season 3 to the start of season 4, besides that he's still having a hard time saying I love you. But actually, what's weird is that in season 3, he didn't have a hard time saying it. He admitted it. He tried telling Elle it, and then he tried taking it back and had a gay-ass realization in front of that closet. But now he hasn't seen her in months, and nothing. Also, I know that Mike and Elle talked about that whole Thanksgiving at yours and Christmas at mine thing, but the fact that Will kept saying it's been a year makes me think that it has been a year or 7 months. And don't worry, it's not lost on me that these relationship things with Mike and Elle are just setting up Byler for season 5. Thank you. And with setting up Byler for season 5, I just adore how the symbol that will be standing for Byler is the painting. Yeah, Will has always been into drawing, but A, we've never seen him actually give Mike any of his artwork. We know that he has it, but we've never been explicitly shown like this is a normal thing for him to gift Mike art. And B, we've never seen him paint before. And I bring this up because they're acting like this painting is this huge sentimental thing. Why? Not to mention what it's a painting of. Like, I know that they play D&D, and so it's definitely important to them. But since when is Mike the heart? Since when is he leading the party? Out of the 3 times we witnessed the party playing D&D together, Mike has been the dungeon master 2 out of 3 of those times. And he definitely could have been playing his character as well, but I don't think he was with how he narrates their adventure, unless he died the first friggin' adventure that they had. Regardless, since when is he the heart? Will's the heart. 1000% Mike is the leader of the party, regardless of what they tried to do in season 4. But Will is who holds the party together. The only time that the party has split in argument is in season 1 when he was missing. And again, I know that us Mike apologists can find the evidence that Mike's the heart, but with a show that explicitly hands the general audience the important details, you'd have to assume that it's the same for Mike being the heart. Like, yes, I know that everything he does is out of care for others, but I think from the untrained eye, everyone would agree that Will is the heart solely because he's the one that's the most sensitive and in tune with his emotions. So what's weird to me with these new focuses is that now the entire foundation of a ship is based off of that painting and the veiled love confession that came with it. It wasn't something that has been building since season 1. It's not like Will painted them in costumes that we've seen them wear. It's not like we've seen Will give Mike little drawings and now this one's important because it was specifically made for Mike. It's just a random plot point that came out of nowhere. I know I've said it over and over again that season 4 doesn't need to be rehashing and recycling all of the plot lines for season 1, but there still should be some consistency so that it still feels like the same show with the same characters. Or, at the very least, if you're going to change the characters, do it naturally and pay them respect. Will has become such a meme, and it's making me lose my mind because he's seen as just some useless little crybaby, and it's like, Yeah, he is crying nonstop. But there are reasons for that. We know why he's crying in the van and in the pizza shop. Too bad that they're not being the most straightforward about it. Like, literally the one time they could have been blunt and brought something up that has been rooted and building since season 1, they didn't, but whatever. I get concerned as a Byler shipper because there are so many Byler antis that say that Byler would come out of nowhere and that there's not enough time to build up relationships, which is just not true, but also, like, is it true? Because clearly they just drop storylines randomly without explanation. Like, the jump between season 2 Mike and season 3 Mike is insane. Season 2 Mike was so clearly struggling with depression and was acting out and being rebellious and closed off, and in season 3 he's all sassy and bright again. And maybe we can say that's because Ella's back, but if that's true, then let's see it build. We had that scene at the snowball at the end of season 2. That would be a great moment to have Mike completely light up when he sees Elle, but instead he doesn't. He's happy, sure, but we've seen Mike be so much more happy, and if we needed to know that this broke his curse of unhappiness, like Elle was what he needed, then he would definitely be at his highest point, right? Or maybe, I don't know, he's just not in love with her. I feel like I'm just rambling at this point and getting things off of my chest. This section is a mess, but I also hope that what I'm saying makes sense. There wasn't a build up to season 4 in terms of relevant plot and character points. It just came out of nowhere. Everything came out of nowhere. One more example of this before hitting the road could be the satanic scare of D&D. They've been playing this game since season 1, but season 4 is the first time it's ever hinted that they're bullied for the game. They're being hunted for sport for the game. Like, way to just catapult into the deep end. And it's another example of how it just ignored season 3. Like, there were no bullying instances in season 3, so how are we supposed to believe that they're the bottom of the food chain in season 4? Makes sense why Al would tell Mike that he doesn't know what it's like to be bullied, because it hasn't happened for years in real time, but how is that how you want your characters to be perceived in Stranger Things? Or do you just not have a plan for your show and have been randomly coming up with things on the fly despite not having the foundation to support them? Questions needing to be answered. So we've discussed that this season has brought up some contradictory ideas, and we have even more questions than we had before. And that's fine. At least fine if these questions get answered. So here are questions that I need answered personally before the series is over, and just to be clear, I don't need you guys to answer them. I have my own theories, but I am pointing out these questions that the show had that are plot holes that the show was created and not explained yet. What took Will and Barb? It's obvious that a Demogorgon didn't take Will because there was no blood and they could use telekinetic powers to open the lock, not to mention the shadowy figure in the street and the clock chimes that could be heard during the capture. For Barb, I don't think that it was the Demogorgon simply because she just disappeared into thin air. Both her and Will disappeared into thin air, and we haven't heard a single creature that can just apparate to and from the Upside Down. A Demogorgon needs a gate. Like, is the forest gate supposed to be Barb's gate? Is that how it was made? How fast are the Demogorgons then? Why were Will and Barb taken? I think it's pretty well established that Will was taken for some greater plot that we can discuss some other time. And I believe that Barb was taken for that reason as well. Like, yeah, she was bleeding and that's what attracted the monster, but did literally no one else in Hawkins bleed? I don't think so. I know they said that, like, a few more people had, like, gone missing and, like, were in the Upside Down. But, like, you'd think that they would have attacked, like, a school, right? Like, kids bleed there all the time. Similarly, how are gates even made? The gates that we've seen being made are the reactions from Vecna's killing, aka the transcendence of his energy through an alternate dimension, and we've seen Elle make them with her powers as well, so what the fuck is that forest gate? It drives me nuts. When did the Upside Down freeze in time? I know that it's frozen the day that Will went missing, but as we've established, it couldn't have frozen that day. It must have reverted back at some point. How the fuck did Will appear in the wall? I have my own theory for this. It's part of my Will Wires analysis of season 1, but my TikTok was hacked, so I need to, like, make a new video of it all. I just need a real answer from the show, though. What's the significance of the library? Like, that's where Will was taken and strung up to, like, be Vecna's little guy. And also it was the intersection of the 4 gates that Vecna made. So, like, why? Why? It's not significant to the characters or to the plot. Like, I saw the first shadow. Henry didn't go to the library ever. When Joyce and Hopper went in the Upside Down, they found some Demogorgon eggs. What were those? Why did Elle recognize Will? How? Is it the whole thing that Will was a part of a greater plot? And if so, like, what the hell is Elle's connection to the Upside Down? Like, can she speak telepathically with Vecna? I don't know. Also with Vecna, he has created an entire conscious layer that people can be physically affected in through their conscious mind, and I want to know how. I want to know why when he kills a person, their body is still in his conscious layer. Like, when they die, their physical form is in their physical world, and their fabricated physical form, like their avatar within their conscious state, also gets to exist in Vecna's mind. Or did he just, like, paint them on the wall And why do people feel physical effects from this mind battle with Vecna? Not the killing, I can understand that. He's transcending their physical state through the dimension of the infiltration of their conscious mind, something that was interrupted in Max's scene when she had something else open up in her conscious mind. That the issue, though, is why did her physical state in her mind have to run? Why couldn't she just, like, think about the whole, you know? Was that just a representation of her focus shifting from him? Like, did it take all those minutes for her to think about it, and so she had to think about running? I don't know. I just feel like it's difficult to understand because, like, Max doesn't have mind powers, but even with Elle having mind powers, like, why does Vecna have to throw her around the room? Like, is that actually going to cause her physical harm? I don't know. I don't get it. I don't know why they made it like this. What the fuck is Mike Steele? Mike Wheeler is either about to become one of the most complex characters in modern media or the laziest and contradictory characters with the sole path of whether or not he's gay. It's insane, but it's true. My wish. I'm well aware that the Duffers will never hear what I have to say, and it doesn't mean anything because the show is over, but my big wish, my big ask, is to return Stranger Things to its original state of awe, to its origins, to its conception, and to stop infantilizing it. Why are we dumbing down this show instead of forcing the audience to dig deeper and think critically and open their minds? I know that I've said so many times that I wish they created some moments to be more obvious and apparent, like the social justice issues with Lucas and Erica and Will's coming out scene to Jonathan, but that's just more because the general audience is used to things being spelled out. Like, they can't just think for themselves and they don't pick up on this stuff, so it's a living hell being in the fandom with these people. And also I have, like, trust issues with the need to see these things be explicitly stated because I don't truly believe the Duffers did all of this on purpose or with a greater goal in mind sometimes. My biggest issue with season 4 is Eddie. I think it is one of the biggest mistakes of this show, mainly in his exception from the fandom due to his treatment in the introduction from the show. Like, it's interesting that the stereotype of the freak only sticks and matters to audiences because Eddie is conventionally attractive and is the white guy that sells weed and plays the guitar. The show is supposed to be about outcasts, right? So how are we supposed to believe that when the popular girl is also doing the drugs that the freak is doing? That means he's not a freak. Or when we are told that Eddie is a freak for playing Dungeons and Dragons, but his character's focus is actually more in music? Also, we have characters that could be considered outcasts. Why is Jonathan's weed dependency played off for laughs, but Eddie's is cool? Jonathan likes music too! Why are we, the audience, pointing fingers and laughing at Will for crying? That's the whole point about the focus being on outcasts. He's an outcast! That's why he's crying! My fear for season 5 is that we're not going to get our questions answered because the Duffers are handing us everything on a silver platter. They do not trust their audience at all and are growing too ambitious for just plain shock value. I know that what I want from season 5 is for Byler to be endgame, so you may leave now if you don't want to hear me talk about it, but my fear of why it wouldn't happen is because the general audience doesn't see the subtext of the relationship, so will the Duffers just take the easy way out? Instead of creating something compelling and different, are they going to go with the stereotypical and overdone straight ship? Instead of the childhood friends to lovers, soulmates, star-crossed lovers, the social outcast tropes, we'd have love at first sight, female reliance, and shiny love bombing. I once saw a Malevolent shipper saying that Malevolent doesn't comply to typical gender roles, which is so tone-deaf and untrue. Like, yeah, Ella's the one with superpowers, and she's able to protect Mike, but that's after he was the one that brought her home, after finding her in the woods. He gave her shelter and clothes and food. She was reliant on him for the first few days, being told when she could leave the house, not having a choice in what she eats or wears or does with her time. Not to mention that Mike was just using her the entire time to find Will. I think in the long run, the legacy of season 4 is that its perception is going to be based off of season 5's events. So much of season 4 was just placing the building blocks for season 5, so there could very well be some things that just come crashing down and thusly make season 4 less enjoyable. For example, Mike's monologue. That sucked. And I'm not just talking about the characters, okay? I'm not arguing whether or not he was lying. I'm talking about how it was made. It had dark and unflattering gray lighting, like Elle was crying and not happy or relieved. Will's in the background is also the one that is telling Mike to say that he loves her. And Mike's not, like, saying it to her open eyes. His voice is screechy and weird, and his wording sucks. Like, saying, "You're my superhero," shout out to Finn Wolford for adding that line, despite the fact that she doesn't want to be considered a superhero. The connotation with Yellow Benny Burgers t-shirt, that doesn't sound romantic or cute. It sounds disgusting because of the way that words have to be said. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, study some Shakespeare, man. And we should all agree that this monologue sucks because we know that the Duffers can do better. They spent an entire day filming Will's confession with meaningful glances from the two of them, beautiful lighting and shots. Like, the scene is fantastic and has so many hidden messages in the lines that create stakes to the situation and pairs it with new possibilities. We have Will saying that Elle commissioned the painting, which could be setting up a plotline where Mike finds out that Will is lying and that he's the one that loves him, pairing with the friends don't lie that we've known from season 1. We have Will reassuring Mike. He was just saying that he feels like nobody needs him around, and Will is proving to him, and not while being selfish, not while his words are what could save the world, that he is important because he's leading the party and he's the heart of the group. Compared to Mike telling Elle that he feels like his life started the day he met her in the woods, even though A, that's the day that his best friend went missing, and when he saw her in the woods, it was marketed as him saying, that's not Will, and not, wow, that's the love of my life. And B, he told Will a few episodes earlier that stumbling upon her was just dumb luck and wasn't fate, so make it make sense, Mike Wheeler. My point is that we know the Duffers can create something beautiful and meaningful, and so if that love monologue is supposed to be taken totally seriously, like if Malevolent is a power couple endgame, then they have some explaining to do because that scene is not created with the endgame in mind. Like, Elle needs to be told that Mike loves her to give her the confidence to save the world. Okay, sexist, but also it doesn't work. The world still ends. Maybe we can blame the inconsistent shooting of the scenes on the fact that they have different directors for each episode, but we're not going to excuse shit like that because, again, this is one of the most popular TV shows of all time. They are literally not allowed to be lazy and dumb. I know that Byler isn't all that the show is, okay? I'm not a crazy Byler shipper, but I actually do think that if Byler isn't canon, it might completely ruin my life, which sounds so dramatic, but it's the frank truth. But hey, if they didn't want me to be pushing Byler, then they shouldn't have been pushing Byler. If they want this show to be taken seriously, they need to take it seriously. We discussed in the season 3 criticism that this show was turning into a mockery of itself with too many brandable and memeable moments created intentionally, and those issues are still apparent. I hope that they went into season 5 with the idea that they are not selling a product and gaining customers, but that they are ending a story that is a meaningful and worthwhile story. It's hard to capture the magic that they had in season 1, but at the same time, they've created such iconic and brilliant moments in modern television, so we know that they have it in them to create greatness again. Season 4 just wasn't it. You can follow my socials if you want to see me talk about Byler and whatnot. I'm on TikTok, Tumblr, Letterboxd, and AO3, all under the username lyricallyxo. Also hope you like the new setup. I moved, but I'm gonna move again because I hate my neighbors. Tell me your thoughts about season 4 and we can battle in the comments, but as always, stay safe and don't get eaten by a clown.